taking a lot of different roles in the company, which helped to just look at things from the broader perspective. So not only software, as it typically happens, but also operations, HR, finances, marketing, sales, growth, all those things. And then I'm heading our own product division as well. So just to put it into context. So we have 2 products. They're still a small part of our business. We generally help clients build products. Typically, those are American clients, typically startups, and they're typically successful, meaning they reached millions of dollars of annual revenue within a few years. Okay, so we have 2 of our own products. One is Mailtrap. It's a fake SMTP server that helps developers not to send improper email from development and staging environments to real people. And second one is Smart Checklist. It's really a tool for us. We play around within this product to do things like I will show you in this presentation. And we have some other products in development and a lot of different proof of concepts, like because we're dreamers and creators. Basically, every organization has to, within different aspects of the company, you have to ask yourself 2 questions. Is it okay that you think about something, like I think that, or do you need to be on the level where you know? When I say, okay, I know that we should do this, I know that we have that problem, I know. So, and then when we build products and we choose between think and know, we typically choose no. So we want to know that something is going on. Then we turn into data blending and into looking into data, looking into analytics. And I'm going to explain you what data blending is. But basically, depending on the stage of organization, you have to pick for yourself: do you know or do you think within some context? Okay. So there's this famous 3-step lean startup methodology. It's build, measure, and learn. And typically there's building has a lot of stuff written about, like how to build properly. You have agile, you have squads, iterations, whatever, or no squads, no iteration, depends. And then you have measure. Measure is much more vague. There's no strict approaches, principles, how to measure your products. There are a lot of guidances, but there's a lot of tools. But how to put it all together, generally it's vague, meaning like not vague. You can find it if you search for a lot, but then it's not a matter of fact. And then from measuring, you have to learn, and then you have to build your next step. So we're going to talk about measure in those slides. So back to know and think. So typically when people build startups, they want to go. They want to keep going. They want to build a product. They think they know what they're talking about. They think they know what needs to be done. And then they are like, okay, we don't always have time to make all the data-driven decisions. So let's just go with our guts, go with our flow. So this stuff about dividing to I know and I think is pretty heavy. You have to go deep down in your data. You have to put it together, and you have to keep it consistent all the time at every important critical steps of your organization structure. So this is pretty heavy stuff, like how to put it together. So please ask questions in the middle of the slides. I'll have some stops for that. And if you want to know more, you can use this email, pdm@railsware.com. Just send us an email and ask us about that, because we don't blog about this because we just don't have time. Maybe someday we will. Okay. Any questions so far? No? Cool. So what is data blending? When you need to join, and actually very often you need to join data sources together. So it's joining data sources from different data sets together so that you get actionable insights. Typically, it's extract, transform, load. So you extract data from some places, some billing places, some analytics, something from server logs, and then you transform it so that it's in a more usable form. Then you load it somewhere so that you use it there. That's a part of data blending. The second one is MapReduce, which is basically you remap your data up until it's usable for you. And we're going to talk a bit about that. Ideally, it should be real-time and fully automated. So for the critical decisions in your company, it should be real-time and fully automated. So why data blending is so critical? Typically, companies have, like small to medium-sized companies have 50 to 300 data sources. When I mean data sources, your billing statement from even your telecom provider, like for example, for Dojo, telecom provider would be an important part of their business. That would be a source which contains data. And then if you just look at the overall big numbers, you might not find the important patterns and the important insights in that. So typically companies have 50 to 300 data sources, medium-sized companies and smaller-sized companies. Big-sized companies have thousands of data sources. One data source is rarely useful. Like you look at it, but then you need to put data side by side to actually make some insights from that. And that one, it becomes a problem. If you need to blend 3, 4, 5 data stations together, you need to put 5 data sources side by side in order to look at them and to look at the graphs and look at some patterns and then put them together to make decisions. Okay, so and different data sources are managed by different people and different services, and then it's not like you need to spend human click-through time in order to look at that, and that's a problem. Formats are not always can be put together. For example, somewhere you have names, somewhere you have names from the passports, somewhere you have emails, somewhere you have something else, and then you cannot put it together that easily. Decisions without data are blind and gut feelings. This is this I think I know part. So when you have good data available, it's very nice and very easy to just go in and then take your blended data and make the decision right away from the data. Okay. Product manager can blend data together deeply from different product sources and understand them and find some really awesome cases. And actually, it's not like a one-time thing. You do it for the main things, for the critical things, and then you go deeper and deeper and deeper, and then you build up your data blended kind of outcomes. And then you keep actually your data in a much better quality because you use it, because you have to blend it, you have to see the patterns, so you use your data, so it's much better. So in this case, we're talking about very simple data blending, where you just need Google spreadsheets, sometimes Excel. I'm not a fan of Excel. It sucks actually, but like spreadsheet, yeah, it's a long story. But Google spreadsheets are much better for that. In Google spreadsheets, we were able to combine 20, 30 data sources, which like import one another. They roll up. So they roll up from many data sources into a few, and then eventually into insights. For example, we calculate salaries like that. You need understanding of databases, of normalization. So you structure your data better. You need to understand simple SQL like joins, group bys. You need to write some scripts to auto-extract data regularly. Sometimes there are APIs you can extract it. Sometimes there's not. You need to log in, download some CSV, put it somewhere, and then from there import it, and so on. It really depends on your use cases. Any questions so far?
Big data sets, you're going to run into problems with like Google Sheets and stuff like that.
Yes. So with the big data, you pre-aggregate your sources up until the smaller usable part. So like you don't need the per second thing. You can just do it daily and then so on. Yeah, and spreadsheets are a problem for that, but it's a very good start to actually see if you need it or not at all. Okay. So here's a super simple example of data blending. So here's a list of analytical events. Here's this King Kong guy, and then there's Batman guy, and here are events that they were doing. So that's Google Analytics export. You have a date, you have event, you have email, you have name, you have user ID. And the second one would be transactions from payment provider. So like you go to your whatever Braintree, you export, and you get this. And then it's really hard to say which users are paying, which users are not paying, like based on any pattern. And then, but if you blend it together, you take unique amount of emails, unique emails and unique users, and then you count how many events each user did, and then if he's paid or not, and the average amount that he's paying from your transaction logs. This becomes very useful. So eventually what you do is every time you extract this from Google Sheet, you import it into spreadsheet, you extract that, you import it into spreadsheet, and then this is something that is always there and that's waiting for you and gives you an insight of data. And that saves a lot of time and a lot of mind power. Because every time you think about, oh shit, I need to put those together. Let's say that my gut feeling tells me to do next step. And then this gut feeling sometimes is not the best. So this is a really nice way to kind of create those metrics to look into your data, okay? Any questions so far? Okay, let's go deeper. So real example of data blending with partials of data. So here's export of Atlassian payment provider from actually our product, where people buy server subscription and cloud subscription, and then depending on their tier and so on and so on. So they send it, they give us an ability to download that using login and password. You have to use your login and password, go to Atlassian, download the CSV, and then maybe do something with that, okay? Here's a Mixpanel flow. So in Mixpanel, you can create a custom dashboard. And in this custom dashboard, what we did is like, we wanted to see which company from Atlassian is doing how many events, how many concurrent events. So, and then we did a very simple thing. We said, okay, if there was any active event, and after that there was an activation, after that there was edit or state change. So for us, this is a checklist. When you click a checkbox or when you edit something, it means that people are using the checklist, okay? So, and then when people do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 events, so the more events they do per month, the more active they are. So the more people use the checklist, actually, the more active they are. Eventually, in Mixpanel, you cannot easily extract this data and actually look at it. You have to like browse around user profiles, look at their individual aspects. You can create reports, but you like this is the best kind of it gets within the Mixpanel without super custom stuff. Okay, but this is still not actionable because we don't know. Like it's really hard to look at something like this. So we use formulas like this. They are formatted as code. Typically, people that use spreadsheets don't do it, and it's a bad thing. Spreadsheets have very flexible way of working with them. It's still shit, but at least it's flexible shit, and it doesn't look that bad. And then with those formulas, you come to something like this. You just blend those two things together. You see if the customer is paid. You see what kind of license they have. So that comes from this first license file. You see what type of license they have. Is it Atlassian, commercial? You see how many days do they have until the end of the maintenance day. Okay, so this is like a useful way to look at this data, which is completely not useful. And then we blend it with this other data, where we see how many concurrent actions they do. And you see here we kind of change the data. We are looking how many actions are they doing compared to their average amount of actions per week. So we kind of turn it into percent-wise. So this becomes our matrix. We re-upload that. We upload this into spreadsheet, and then spreadsheet gives us that. And then we can look at the data in a much better format and understand it. Understand what our customers are actually doing. And actually, then we proceed further. When we see patterns, we data blend those patterns. And when we see patterns in patterns, we data blend that, and then and so on and so on. So that eventually you get a dashboard which says, are we like growing or are we dying? But then you can always go deeper, and this thing stays and kind of works overnight for you every time you want to look at it. Any questions on that?
You're mainly using that for like tracking interface, like functionality. Is that what you're talking?
So we use data blending for a lot of stuff, but in this case, we're talking about like if I would just be explaining using data blending for everything, that sounds like a crazy house. In this specific case, it's more about product management. Well, because when you use data blending for operations or HR, like no one cares about that. Everyone cares about products, product management, growing products, selling products. Yeah, and then in this case, it's like it's nothing that we found within the product management industry being any standard at all. Like typically product managers go to a analytics division and they ask them for analysis, and they give them analysis in 2 weeks, and then it's already too late, right? Yep.
You said that you work in a few steps towards some key numbers which are important for you. Is that correct?
Yes, but not key numbers. You also want to look at activity. You don't want to just see the key numbers because maybe your matrix is wrong. So you want to see it left to right all the time. You want to see the details, you want to see the medium part, you want to see the key numbers, yes.
Yeah. My question is, how do you decide what the end metric should be?
Yes, so thank you for that. So basically here's one of the metrics that we came up to that is useful for us. You understand statistics by looking at data. So you look at your data, you see patterns within kind of more raw data. So even here, you could see some patterns. You could see you could see with conditional formatting that some guys are much darker green and some are going to white. So something is wrong here. And then based on this, we would want to make, for example, analytics like this. Let me show you that. So this analytics, which we saw has patterns in it, we turned into this analytics, which shows you per week, per a relative week of a start of this company, how much events were people doing in this company compared to the average. So you can see that this guy, averagely, they're doing X, but here's a segment, okay, let's drop that for a second. And those guys were doing 147% of events. Then they did 17, then 88, then 112. So this looks like something this looks like a good pattern. Like people are using it, let's say once every 2 weeks, for example. This pattern definitely looks bad because they just use it for week 1 and then everything else is dead. And then you could see right away from far away where are good patterns and where are bad patterns. Okay. So you look at patterns at a more raw data source, and then you're looking by that. You're saying, okay, let me make a data source where we see how many percents of weeks do they use the checklist more than 80%. Okay, so basically what you want to do is not to stress your head by looking at this data and saying, okay, this probably means this, but then make another step into that direction. And this is very cheap. This is very cheap to do it, but once you master it, you can basically go into some direction, make a branch. If it doesn't make sense, kill it, and then go into the right direction. Okay, and it's very, very cheap to do that.
And would it work if you change your workflow the other way around and say these 3 metrics is what I want to know, and then start digging into the data and see how to get to those 3 numbers? So
yes,
not from big to small,
yes,
from small to big.
Yes, yeah, but yes. So there are also kind of default industry metrics, you could say that are famous right now. And then, for example, which is the customer lifetime value, the MRR, the ARR, and so on. Yes, so you can work both ways, and then and you can do that using data blending. So there's a product called ChartMogul. ChartMogul is a product that helps you calculate your MRR, and it's eventually a piece of shit because when you connect it to something and then it sucks the data, it might take 1 day to calculate it, and then it might give you wrong results. So what we did is basically we made data blending of MRR. Then we were like, maybe we're doing it wrong. Let's upload it there. So we uploaded it to this product. That the only thing it does, it calculates MRR. And then this product showed us a different MRR than what we did. Actually, it showed like $1,000 more than we. So we downloaded their data, compared, and then found the bug in their system where they're just counting not every transaction, they're counting as an upgrade. So like the customer not just paying, but he's like upping his subscription, so they counted more MRR. So some people probably have less money than they think they do, and they're making decisions right now to hire based on this product. So, and our spreadsheet was better, and then we did it in like 30 minutes, which is cool. So and then it's also very nice to test those other products that give you your metrics. Like, okay, let's see raw data, let's calculate it, and you kind of believe your metrics better than some of the products, and yeah. So you can do both ways. So and then for example, for this you can find patterns. For example, filter and find patterns of how many people drop off in week 1, and you see that most of the people that drop off in week 1, like you don't see it here because it's a very short scroll, but those are people that have 1 person or 2 people in the company. like they abandon the product, abandon the usage of the product. And then you can see how many abandoned in week 2, and eventually you can make a graph that shows you how many, where, when, which weeks people abandon the product. So this gives you an ability to drive into your like analytics and explore it. Okay. And something like this is very useful. It means that you need to improve, definitely improve week 1 experience, and then work on improving week 2 experience.
So either you're cross-referencing that with like EDM campaigns. So in the second week, you send an email marketing campaign, and then mash up that data and see if it affects it, and then
yeah. And you can do it from here. Even you can export companies which kind of are in this risk criteria, export their emails, and then find like so. For example, this license. So we don't always get customer emails, privacy and stuff. But within this license file, we do get customer emails. So what we can do is take the website and take the license data, blend it, and then take billing contact from there, and then just put it into some email marketing campaign, and then send it to people. And actually that worked out as well. So, and then you can do handy things. So this number here, it's a bit of a crazy number. So in order, like, it's very, when you look at usage of checklist, you see that there are companies that have 1 people, companies that have 2 people, but how many, like how serious are there with checklists? Because you can make just 1 checklist per month with 1 checkbox, and then you either check it or not. Like, and those people are not so interested for us to work with, because most likely, like, it's the product will not give them a lot of value. So we made up this metric while looking at data. Here it is. This is like the median amount of events per person. Okay. So we divided company, all events that the company did, by amount of people in the company, and by yeah, and that's it. And then we took a median out of it, not average but median. And eventually we came up like there are different peoples. Someone has this. Let me zoom in a bit. It doesn't zoom in. Yeah, anyway, so this is like 8.5, this is 30, this is 28, this is 4. So it's, again, it starts to become hard to look at this. So what we did is we took the log n function out of that, and we said, okay, to which segment are those users at? They are in a segment of to which power you have to take the log n number. And for example, those guys are, and then round it up. I don't know if it makes sense, but if you're really interested, you can ask me. And you can see that those guys are in a segment of 8 events per person per company. And those guys are in a segment of 32 events per person per company. So then you start getting a feeling of what kind of a caliber of a customer are you talking about, okay? And this is something like Mixpanel is not going to give it to you. Like you really have, and so Mixpanel is okay to do, you can do 1 report, like 1-step report in Mixpanel. You can really try hard and do 2 or 3 steps. What it means is that, like, I mean, we had this first step where we took this and this into that. And then from this, we are building that. And from this, we're building this. So this is like number 4 and number 5. In Mixpanel, you really have to copy paste your code all the time. And then it becomes really a mess. Then you don't know if your code is wrong, or are you really looking at the real data, or like it just becomes a mess. So, but with like steps like this, you can just flow through and recategorize of things however you want, and look at them however you want, what makes sense to you. And then this really helped us a lot by contacting the right people and asking them what is good and what is bad about checklist, quantify the important points, and then basically make some fixes on top of that. And then now the product is going into like it's really like moving fast. It has a 25% growth per month and counting. And basically a graph like this, which shows amount of active people per segment of usage per company. And then basically the most important thing here is that it's going from light green to dark green. And like we see the pattern of it moving forward and moving upwards. Make sense? Any questions? Yeah, we went through that. We went through this. Yeah, so so based on something like this, you can make key decisions, and this is reusable. It's not one time. It's not like you went, you did all of this stuff. You build up your infrastructure of spreadsheets. You have this, and you can work with that. And you can see if you're improving this or you're not improving. And you can also do it over time and so on. Yeah, so this is what we did. So week 1, most drop-offs, we did some emails to them, and then we did improve it already out of using that. And then basically the product usage heat map is showing us if we're doing better or not. Any questions?
So each week you're getting new data. Do you do the whole process again? No? Every time do you export the CSVs and do you do that all the time? Or
Yes.
do you run some scripts to?
Yes. So yeah. So basically, your analytics is alive. You should not automate your whole analytics right away, because you most likely will be wrong. You should do 20% of automation of analytics, and the rest you should use your hands and your eyes. Maybe 30 or 40 if you're more sure. Because if you're going to automate your whole analytics and then you will end up looking at the wrong thing, you'll spend a lot of time and you'll be frustrated and drained from energy. So spend 20%, look at it. If it makes sense, you will want to go back to it and then spend another 20% on top of the previous 20%. And now you get 40, ideally. If it was a slightly wrong direction, then you're going to go into kind of into neighbor direction. And then you're going to automate it 20% more. So, but eventually, after few months, you will automate 100% of most important analytics that you really want to go back to. And then you make scripts that go and take data. Instead of, like, at first you go, you log in, you export the CSV, and then you go and import it with hands. That's still fine. But then when when you get pissed on that, you just automate it. Yep.
You ever ran into customers that didn't have the exact event tracking that you needed to start measuring?
Sure.
On a platform, so
Sure.
what do you do with that? Like let's say you approved to go ahead and start tracking, and then you run into that. Usually, is there any issues, or is
You mean
time-wise and budget?
So you mean to start tracking stuff, right?
Or yeah, you have a client that needs to have a transparency of what's going on.
Yeah.
But let's say you don't really know what tracking is already occurring, so that you can extract that data.
Mm-hmm.
How would you approach that?
Just ask them, like, what is it that you're tracking? And then can you show us, can you give access to all of the things that you're tracking right now? If you are kind of more expert in tracking, there's always more tracking that people are aware of, because developers like to track their stuff. You have logs, you can extract it from there. You have some apps that are integrated, you can extract some data from there. You always have much more tracking than you think. And then ask them around, navigate the code base, talk to people that use the tracking, and then just make an index of things that are being tracked. And then think what would be useful already today to kind of to use the tracking that is in place, and then to make a better decision. Every time people see a bigger, better picture that they look at and they say, "Wow, this is very nice. Like it just saved me, like a day of my work." Then they give more energy into tracking, and so on and so on. But the problem is that when people first try to set up tracking but they don't use it, they end up tracking too many things, and then they end up confused. So it's better to do two things at the same time. You track stuff, but then you use it, and then you see what you're missing, and then you try to track the right things. Otherwise, you ask engineers to track everything, and they're like, "What do you mean, everything?" Right?
So how often do you iterate your tracking process?
Real time.
No, I mean, you just said that you need to look at it again and see what adjustments you want to make.
Yes.
How often do you do that? Look at the results and make a change, like, okay, I'm slightly off with this data, or I'm slightly off there.
So it depends how much value is there. The simplest one would count how much money are you losing, or you could gain more, or you're like, so yeah, how much money are you losing, or how much money could you gain from certain amount of transactions, right? If you have 3 transactions, they are not tracked, but you know you have around just a few, like 3 transactions, and they are not like value driven. There's not much sense to go into that. You have to go into massive problems, like the usage of the product, billing, or something that prevents billing, and then you really try to get any data to end the loop of analysis. So you try to get any data, even if it's bad data. Like Google Analytics typically has bad data. It's not like an event tracking system, but you can still use some pages, for example, as an event tracking. Then you end up your loop of data. You look at it, you say, okay, this is generally useful, but I need more granular data. And then after you close your loop and you made decision that this is a good idea to pursue that, you go back and try to find better data. If it's not there, you just add the tracking at that point, and then wait for the data to populate, but then track something else.
Yeah. Is it something every week, every month, or how often do you iterate that?
If as a product manager, I would say daily. It really depends on where your value and goals sit and problems, right? If you build everything that you should build, and then you don't know what to do next, then it's very important to go like almost full time into tracking. So we had different projects, and then depending on the project, we were either doing it like monthly, just improving it slight bit, 20% monthly, or we were improving 20% at every iteration, and that was happening full time for a week, for 2, for 3 weeks, and so on. So we were reblending the data, reblending, creating databases where you can kind of match data, make it more standardized, make sense of it, and then doing it real time. Yeah, so I typically spend a lot of time in spreadsheets because we use data blending everywhere. Yeah, any more questions?
Just one quick one more. So if you look at this data, can you, in your experience, can you spot some like indications that you're looking at false data or something is missing from there?
Yeah.
Can you give some examples of some indications that you're looking at? When can you identify this is wrong? Something is missing.
So the beauty of data blending is that it's strict. It's not, you don't look at just one source of data like Google Analytics. Because you look at Google Analytics and it shows some stuff, and then you're like, okay, I have some stuff. This is great. With data blending, you really try to squeeze a practical answer to yourself. And you say, okay, let me blend all my licenses with all usages from Mixpanel, okay? So you blend that, and then you end up that some data is missing. It's not in licenses, but it's in Mixpanel. And you're like, okay, what's going on? Like, so you're gonna, you will not be able to join them together, because on the left you will have activity, but on the right, when you blended the data, you will have an A, like nothing, not found. And you're like, okay, what's going on? And then maybe you have to come up with some interim dictionaries, like company has 2 names, or company changed name in the past. So you have to kind of like create helpers so that your whole data is completely blended together. There's no NAs, there's no like missing stuff. So it pushes you for an actual pursuit of 100% coverage of the data. Well, it depends on you, right? 100 or not. If you have 97% coverage, and then the last 3% is a big problem to come and take from somewhere, then, for example, Atlassian doesn't send you refunds in the list of licenses. It just deletes them from there, which is madness. Like, data sources should not work like that. So, but we only had 7 refunds, so we just ignore that because it's not that important. But we could go and find the refunds from somewhere else. Let's say every time someone refunds, we get an email. Email is a great data source because it's consistent. Emails are machine generated, which means that they have consistent subject, consistent everything. So you can go and extract it from there and have yourself a refund data source. Make sense? Yeah. Yep.
This term data blending, what is difference in like a classical data analytics on warehouses, like using MicroStrategy or Apple Discover and so on? Like a classic existing data mining.
Right. So data mining typically comes with a big investment cost in terms of infrastructure, right? Google Spreadsheet is, well, it depends which plan you are on, but typically costs nothing. All the data sources that you already have in different places, also you already paid for them anyway. So when you pre-blend them and put them together in a Google spreadsheet, you do not have to. It's very simple tools. They do not block you and prevent you by learning a complex infrastructure. Typically, data warehouses and kind of more massive apps that you set up in order to create analytics are expensive and require specific expert knowledge that you have to go and train for that. And startups are not ready for that. Spreadsheet is simple. Everyone knows it. Everyone tried it. Yet again, costs you nothing. And then you can do it within 1 day. You can learn a lot of things within 1 day. And those systems just block startups. They just like, that's too much for now. Like, let's go blind between choosing a data warehouse solution and this. Make sense?
So it is kind of smaller, lighter version of data warehouse, includes data mining and what?
You can say that, but you do not need a tractor to break an egg. So if you have data warehouse, which is a tractor, and then you have one thing that you want to blend, a simple thing, you're not going to use data warehouse ever. So you can say it is lighter and simpler, but when you are in the more complex use cases, you have a simpler sub-use cases within your complex use cases. So you would take your main big, huge data sources. For example, we have a client which uses data warehouse because they get 10 terabytes of data daily. And like, you're not going to put it into a spreadsheet, obviously. They do data warehouse for that. But for simpler stuff, they still use spreadsheet. Otherwise, because, I mean, you can be productive within minutes and hours. While if you want to take new use case into data warehouse, it would take you an engineering team. If an engineer is involved in a experimental product management analytics, you're dead. Like, engineers typically want to build big, great stuff, and then smaller scope, longer time frames, right? Yep.
What do you use for like a scripts, or do you use on formulas in spreadsheet,
Yeah.
or do you use some other tools to program it?
Formula in spreadsheets. We built a in-house tool that would replace this nice work, this like mediumly working pile of crap. We built the tool in-house. It's an MVP for us. We're going to move everything from spreadsheets into that. But if you have less than 200,000 cells, spreadsheet work 97% of the time. 3% of the time, it's magic. 200,000 cells, yeah. So basically,
all together, all sources.
Yeah. So yeah.
What about joining them? Is it this complex of joining? Does it make performance problems? Do you have it, or because the sets in between sets when the joining comes multiply. It's expensive.
Hopefully, it doesn't multiply. It actually goes back into smaller amount of data, because you as a human being don't want to look at huge lists of something. So you can pre-blend some of the data sources and then blend them together. Let's say if you have by the minute statistics and you're really interested about weekly, and then you have 3 data sources, everything is by the minute. You aggregate each one of them to weeks, and then you blend them together into weekly view. Like, you don't need by the minute. So you don't want to blend 3 by the minute data sources in spreadsheets. That would be slow, yes. But if you omit if you omit complexity within the spreadsheets, it's still useful. You can still use spreadsheets. It's sometimes slow, but it's bearable compared to when you involve an engineer. This might be slowed down for minutes to get you an answer, and when you get an engineer involved, it will be slowed down for years in the long term. Make sense? Yeah.
When do you think at least people need to start data blending? So if you're early stage startup and you have like 5 users, is it make sense to start data blending, or which is a minimum requirement? Should it be subscription business, any type, or it should be one-time payment product, or what's your advice when at least people should think about data blending?
when the time spent on data blending will be 10x return, then kind of it makes sense. And before
Or you
that,
need to make a decision.
well, if you know that you have 5 users and you don't have any other data, there's like you can make a decision right away. You know, you know that you're fucked. Yeah. Any other questions? Here's a simple company data blending. It's out of the context, but like every time we talked with our growth team, which does recruiting, HR, company communications, they would say Key and Krakow offices, blah blah blah, and we would say, why do you keep referring Key and Krakow offices? We're a remote company. We have a lot of cities, and they're like, well, it's a minor amount of our company. So I went and data blended that within probably 2-3 minutes. List of unique cities within our company, amount of people there, the percentages of people per city, and then eventually how many percent are not in our 2 main office locations. And it's 26% of the company is not in Kyiv or Krakow. Okay, make sense? So I do not have to talk to them and say, I think that we have a lot of people not in those 2 locations, and we don't have to go into a table and count it by hand. Okay, there's a number there, and basically they are not arguing anymore because they go there and look at it. I mean, it doesn't make sense to look at it because we have a consistent amount of people with it. But you have this number, and it's a fact-driven. It's I know and not I think, and it was done like super simple within minutes. Same amount of how many people years within the company do we have, and then there are 9% of people who are 11 years in the company. Okay, and then there are 50% of people who are more than 5 years in the company. So this was the same thing. You take your data sources, you blend them quickly, and then you make those decisions pretty quickly. And it's something that people wouldn't do if the tools were not cheap. And I would say it's like Google, right? I wanted to know today how many octopuses are there on the planet, and I definitely wouldn't come and count them unless I could write it in Google and get an answer from that. Very similar in Google spreadsheets. You prepare your matrices, they give you answers, and then you have your answers very cheap, repeatable, kind of consistent manner. And then you're a developer of your own analytics, so you push it forward all the time. And when you come back, most likely it's in the previous state that you left it. Sometimes it's broken because something happened with Google spreadsheets. Yeah, but that's it. Okay. Want to know more? There's a website called Coding is for Losers, which shows how to use Google spreadsheets. It shows about, I would say, 25% of the tricks you can do in Google spreadsheets. If you are really interested about how to use spreadsheets for that, you can email us at pdm@railstar.com, and we probably will send you some info. We plan to do some blog posting on that, like case per case, to explain different cases, but not yet. Not for the next 3 to 6 months for sure. But if you need, you can email that, and then we'll send you the links. Any more questions?
Can you go back? You had a place where you were pulling data from SQL to spreadsheets, I think, or something like that.
Yes.
Do you have any resource of any learning resource of how it teaches how to do that?
Yeah. So basically, this Coding is for Losers is a resource to learn how to write Google spreadsheets formulas. But to import data into Google spreadsheets, there are a few of them. They all are broken in some way, because spreadsheet community is just so spreadsheet community says Coding is for losers, but basically spreadsheets are for losers. But it's still a very nice tool compared to just writing code for things like that. So there are some links, and then if you're interested, just send me an email and I will reply to you with the links. At least I can actually, if there's enough people asking the same questions, I'll write a blog post about it, like a small blog post, and send it over. Okay. Yep.
You mentioned earlier getting data from email as a record source if it's missing elsewhere, it's an original format. What tool do you use to get the data from the email into the sheet? Mail parser, or do it yourself? Or? You
can do Zapier, actually. Yeah, you can do Zapier and on email extract data and put it into spreadsheet. If that's too hard for Zapier, then you extract email, put the whole body into spreadsheet, and spreadsheet, you do regular expressions to extract it from the email. Yeah. Like, I mean, that will end in some point, but it will show you it's a useful thing to automate and maybe to make it one step better. So, yeah. All right, that's it. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. What is it? No. No, but if I want to make, if I want to know the thing, So that's why I like spreadsheets, because you can make you can make online collaborative roll up data sets, and then basically